Story, my ghosts and goblins. It's that time of year again, Halloween. Personally, I'm not as big of a fan of it like I was when I was a kid, but I still like family-friendly creepy movies like Coraline. Give me a bowl of popcorn and put on 1995's Casper and I'm set for the Halloween season. Speaking of, I only have one question about that movie. How do the ghosts work in this movie? Not like the unfinished business and crossing over thing, but what dictates their form and lack of memories? For this, let's get in the right mindset. This is a ghost-o-matic. It can turn people to and from a ghostly form. Let's hop in. Avante! This feels funny. At least it's easy on my feet. Anyway, in Casper from 1995, many ghosts come and go. Spoiler warning for those who haven't seen it, by the way. In the movie, we see Casper and his uncles, who only look like blobs, and Dr. Harvey, Kat's dad, and Kerrigan turn into ghosts and hold some resemblance to their previous life. This might be so we can recognize them, and because Casper and his uncles already had their designs locked in place over the span of the franchise, but that's not fun. I want a universe-related answer. So I'll make one. Keep in mind, most of this is just speculation and a headcanon based off of the little information that the movie gives me. I believe the ghostliness is linked to memories and the span the person has been dead. Let's start with Kerrigan and Dr. Harvey, because those are the easiest to decipher. When Kerrigan died, she wasn't in like the best of mindsets, but she was more clear of mind than Dr. Harvey when he died. So she remembered who she was, and she remembered what she was doing before she died. And when she did die, she had all of her memories. And she remembered what she looked like when she was alive, which is the reason why she looks like who she was when she was alive, when she was a ghost, and why she remembers what she was doing and what she was when she was alive. Out of everyone, she is the easiest to understand why she looks the way she does and why she remembers everything. Dr. Harvey is pretty easy too. He was drunk when he died. And people who are drunk aren't the most sound of mind and don't exactly remember a lot when they were alive. Hence the reason when he died, he didn't remember Kat, because the only thing running through his mind was a chemical imbalance due to the overdose of alcohol. He still remembered what he looked like, yes, but pretty much everything else tends to fade away when you're drunk. I mean, your mind isn't clear, you start doing things that you shouldn't be doing when you are a functional person of society and are sober, but you still have some memory of who you are in that moment and what you look like, kind of. So when he died, he still looked like who he was because he remembered what he looked like, but he didn't act like him, he didn't have his memories because of the chemical imbalance of alcohol. Easy enough to understand, I hope. Casper and his uncles are where I get a little bit far-fetched. So, again, keep what I say with a grain of salt. Based off of a few things, like the older furniture of the house, like how old the house was, how it was like condemned for over 50 years, you could say that Casper was probably alive around the early 1900s. Plus, the dress that Casper gives Kat in the movie looks a lot like a nightgown that people wore in the early 1900s. So it's safe to say that he was alive at the most, like at the early 1900s before he died. Meaning, if we are putting us in present day being the time that the movie came out, 1995, then he has been dead for, at the most, 90 years. In 90 years, you're probably going to lose a lot of your memories. We see in the movie when Kat discovers an old room with all of Casper's old toys, that when he discovers this room, he begins to remember who he was when he was alive. The things he liked to do, the names of his toys, and he remembers that he had 5 fingers, an odd thing to remember, but hey, he remembers. That leads me to believe that if there is something that's still around that is connected to who you were when you were alive. Even if you're dead, you can still remember who you were by making that connection. Like, oh, this is something that brings me back to this time and place when I was alive, therefore I remember who I am. And when you lose the greatest connection you could ever have to your life, then you are going to forget over time. You are going to forget who you used to be when you were alive. When your parental figure dies, it's going to make you lose that connection to life and therefore lose that memory of life that gave you a sense of identity, thus turning you into a blob like Casper. But his uncles are still around. Why don't they give him that connection to who he was when he was alive? Great question. This is where things get really, really, really difficult to explain. And keep in mind, everything about the uncles is purely speculation based off of how they act around Casper and Dr. Harvey, and basically how they act in general through the entire movie. Everything that I say is based off of purely their actions, nothing else. Well, except for this stuff with connections to the real world and blah, blah, blah. I am going to say that the three uncles mooched off of Mr. McFadden and Casper McFadden while they were alive because they primarily only drank alcohol, got drunk, and partied. That's basically what they did when they were alive, and treated Mr. McFadden and Casper as a fallback and sort of like servants, which is why they have their own rooms with their own beds that have their name on them. the ventilation system over Sneaky's head, that's hilarious. So it's my idea that after Mr. McFadden died, Fatso, Stinky, and Stretch took over Whipstaff Manor as the only living relatives still alive after Mr. McFadden died. That's why in the movie they claim Whipstaff Manor as their domicile, because Mr. McFadden doesn't own it anymore to them. It's their house, and they're allowed to do whatever they want in their house. Thus, they could probably get drunk whenever they want, because it's their home now. It's not anyone else's. So, my speculation is that the way that they died is through alcohol poisoning. This is probably why they're so irritable and so, how do I describe it? Annoying throughout the movie, because if they're awakened from their naps, then they are very irritable and tend to lash out. This probably alluding to a hangover after extensive alcohol drinkage. They tend to be very selfish and only care about their personal pleasures and what's good for the trio and not good for the entire house or even for Casper. So I don't think it's that far-fetched to think that they died from alcohol poisoning. Plus, if they act like this and treat Casper like a servant, then they aren't going to give Casper the connection that he needs to remember who he is. So I think that pretty much explains everything. And I think that's it. I don't have anything else to say. What do you guys think? Do you think I was close? Do you think that this is a perfectly good explanation for how the ghost thing works? Or do you think that all of this is just a waste of time and doesn't need to be said? Because it's just the animation budget, because these are recognizable characters and we need to recognize these guys as ghosts but still understand that these are the characters from the actual thing that died. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Thank you all very much for watching and have a great doodle day. Happy Halloween! Bye! Now I should probably turn myself back, shouldn't I? Guys, I don't think it worked. Send help.